So today I want to share with you a sample of what a QAPI meeting is like and how it flows. So starting off, you pick your date for your meeting and you invite the members of your QAPI committee. So usually the members of your QAPI committee would include your medical director, the administrator, director of nursing, maybe someone from anesthesia, and your patient safety committee. And there you have your patient safety committee. There may be nurses, would also include the medical director, could include anesthesia, any member of the staff actually who wants to be a member of the patient safety committee. And of course, the risk manager, that would be myself. This video basically is for someone who probably has not done a QAPI meeting before and to help them to kind of familiarize themselves with how the process flows. There's a million and one ways to create this meeting. This is just one way I find that helps someone who may be unfamiliar, maybe they're new to the ASC and they just need some guidance as to how to set up their meeting. So this is in no way a complete training on QAPI. This is just something that I'd like to share to someone who may be new at having these QAPI meetings. And so we continue. So at the beginning of the meeting, you want to, of course, approve the minutes from the prior meeting, because this is an ongoing process. That's why it's QAPI, Quality Assurance Performance Improvement. That's what QAPI means. And then you state which quarter are you reviewing. So in this example, they'll be reviewing the third quarter. So then you have your infection control nurse, and that's where you would talk about how many infections or if there are infections and what happened, the outcome, and look at plans to improve the processes if it was something that was under the control. Sterile processing, that's all under infection control. And you would look at your sterile processing if there are any issues related to that. And then, of course, the infection control nurse would come up with a plan to the meeting committees to see how the issue can be resolved. And everyone who is familiar would be able to add their view of the situation. Also, we discussed chart reviews. How are we doing with chart reviews? Charts are very important. They tell the story of the patient, so it's really important to have those reviewed regularly. And you would have someone in charge who would speak to that. How many audits have been completed? And how far are you up to date with your reviews or behind? So you want to stay ahead of that. On top of that, you want to follow up on items added to your audit per Joint Commission, AAA ACA. So let's say you had an inspection. Generally, when the inspectors come out and they cite you for something or make notation of something, they would have you create a plan of correction, a POC, and send it in to them. So those issues that you were cited on or that were observed to not be in compliance with the accreditation bodies or the state surveyor, you want to make sure you focus on those things. So if there is a revisit, those items will be addressed, because usually they will have a copy of the previous survey and they will be focused on those areas that they found not compliant from previous surveys. So you always want to check those to make sure that you're in compliance. And so then the next item on the agenda is the patient satisfaction surveys. You have a nurse in charge for that, and they would speak to how many surveys are coming in and what is the outcome. Are people very satisfied, over the moon, excitedly satisfied, or not so much? So that's where you would discuss about your patient satisfaction surveys. Also, you have your privacy compliance officer. Now, a lot of these roles could be filled by the same person. So, under privacy compliance, are we compliant with HIPAA? Were there any breaches? And so that would be discussed, and whatever issues with that, everybody would be privy to that, and again, come up with plans to help remedy that situation if there was an issue. If the facility has performed any benchmarking, you'd want to have that um, briefly or in detail, depending on your timeline, go through the benchmarking and what results you were able to glean from that, and how you were implementing it, and if it's made a difference in your patient safety effort. Medication safety, that's myself again, Lorraine Charles Huston. I'm the consultant pharmacist and also the risk manager. And in this particular case, during my visits to the facility, I was finding medication in syringes that were not labeled, and that's a big no-no. So I brought that to the attention, and so their action is to re-educate the anesthesia staff, because it was happening in the anesthesia carts. Then you talk about next thing is patient safety, the canceled case log, um, how many you had so far, and of course your variants or incident reports, and that information summary would be attached to this QAPI meeting. You'd also talk about what studies you've done. You're required to do, depending on your state, you're required to do at least 2 studies per year. And this facility did a total joint revision, and they discussed that here. They did one on blocks, and they were also focusing on the Joint Commission inspection, what they needed to be monitoring. And again, the studies for there's some other studies here that they wanted to add in to this. So the studies above are the completed ones, and these ones are the ones in process. And so they discussed those here. And then the safety officer talks about any safety issue that the facility would be experiencing. And then below here, they would list if there are any other issues to report and goals for the next quarter, so that it can be followed up at the next meeting. Then they also mentioned that the annual life safety training will be coming up shortly, and then the meeting is adjourned. This was a very brief and concise overview of what a QAPI meeting looks like. Like I said, you could you could structure your meeting any way that you want that would work for you and your team. But this here was just an example that I thought might be helpful for someone who was not familiar with the QAPI meeting. Hope this helps.